Welcome back to Unemployed Millennial Podcast. I am your host, Anne-Marie, and today we are in Alaska. That is a window to the outside, and it is currently 4:52 p.m. and it is that dark outside. Deep royal blue at 4:50. And if you are not on YouTube, if you are listening from an audio-only platform, you will always be the priority. My first love with podcasting was from audio only. I would be driving like an hour to my internship, full-time internship in LA traffic at Neutrogena, and I would listen to Tim Ferriss and How I Built This, and I just loved podcasts. That's where I fell in love. And apparently also audio only listeners have a higher completion rate by like triple the amount. So y'all are loyal, and I always reward loyalty in my life. So I will try my absolute best to always provide the best audio experience. I actually was not going to launch at all video until someone was just like, that's kind of dumb for today's age of podcasting. And usually sometimes I don't listen, but this time I was like, okay, I was convinced. But I also think that some people are just genuinely more comfortable with audio only. And so I do think that there will be episodes in the future where they will only be on audio. So if you're listening on an audio only platform, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything about yourself. But if you are on YouTube, I can't always promise you that I will be posting a YouTube video. And if you're confused 1 week why I didn't post an episode up here, it might just be because I'm not posting an episode. But it also could be that it was an audio only episode. So I have been having like the best time with my podcast. It just feels kind of like the early days of YouTube when I started 11 years ago, and I would refresh my view count every single like hour and see that I got like 2 new views. That's how I've been feeling with my podcasts. Like I'll refresh and be like, wow, I got some new listens, or I got some new subscribers. This is actually the only platform that I'm growing in subscribers on, and I kind of can't believe it. Like today, in the last 28 days, I've grown 216 subscribers, and they've mostly been from the solo podcasts, which I'm really trying to get some guests on here. But the thing is, with solo podcasts, it's just me. I only have to rely on me and my schedule. So it's just like easier to be able to commit to doing that, at least for now. But I do really want to have people that I want to have on. I'm going strong on my alcohol sobriety. I could just like imagine my face being red and then just me being full from the holiday feasting, and then me just being full and kind of hot from the alcohol. And that just hasn't happened this season. And it's been nice. So that's going strong. But since I graduated college at USC, every single place that I've lived, weed has become legalized. So even in New York, like a year into living there. So LA, New York, and Alaska. So when I come back here, I'll just, dabble. I tried filming this yesterday night. I was like, no, I'll wait for the sunlight, the natural sunlight. And I'm just like, what natural sunlight? This, it reminds me of when I was in high school and started my YouTube channel, and I would try to film makeup videos, and I would just be in the dark trying to figure out the best lighting. But starting YouTube, I would just talk to a camera and be talking for like an hour, and then I'd have to cut it down to like a 15-minute YouTube video because that's what YouTube wanted. But now I think people are more into podcasts, or more down to listen to podcasts, and that is just my dream come true. So thank you for being here. If you have been here, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the comments, but even the likes, like it all is really encouraging on this platform. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you. And something that I want to announce is that I think I will have a new posting schedule. So before, I think in my last podcast, I was like, I want to post once every 2 weeks, like every fortnight. But I have been thinking, and I've heard this statistic a few times from the podcasting community, but I heard it again and I thought it was super relevant. So I'm going to share it with you. This is from Jack Butcher on Twitter, or X. I still call it Twitter. I love Twitter and I go on it too often, but I feel like I will not call it X because to me it's just Twitter. But he tweeted 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. That's 1.8 million people who quit. Of the 200,000 left, 90% will quit after 20 episodes. That's another 180,000 gone. To be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes. So I am currently at 16 episodes. The last 3 have been solo podcasts, which have just been much easier because I don't have to require like a guest to come on, and then I don't have to overthink how they're being portrayed. However, my podcast channel recently, within this month, hit its 1-year birthday, which is kind of crazy to me because I don't know how that went by so fast, but also that just kind of goes to show that I have not really put in that many repetitions on this podcast because I'm on the 16th episode within a year. That is far less than 1 episode a week. And so I did some calculations and I came to the realization, the mathematical conclusion, that if I post 1 episode every single week for the rest of the year, then I will be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world. And so that's what I think I'm going to do because I can commit to doing this once a week with myself. And ideally I will have other guests on that I really like and I'm excited to talk to, but this can happen every week. And even this is like maybe my like second day trying to record this podcast, but I can do this. And I think it's actually really fun and cool to just have some little life update captured. Some thoughts that I've been having while I've been at home and just like reevaluating different points of my life. One of them, I had the thought that, this past year I did some more calculations and I've only posted 8 videos on my main channel. And it's either 8 videos or like 7. And there's like a total of like 9 or 11, but a few of them are leftover Vlogmas vlogs from the December prior. So then it bled into the next year. So like probably a total of like 7 to 11 videos I've posted on my main channel entirely. And I think, some of that is good. I think I've been on YouTube for like 11 years and I just see it as like a digital extension of myself, and you need to like learn and grow and have something to like make videos or like podcasts on, I think. But a lot of that I think is just like a fear of being seen. And I had this weird thought that I was like, if I'm not even posting on these platforms, it's not giving an opportunity for the people who like my stuff and want to watch and support. It's me not being there and me just taking my presence away is not even giving the opportunity for people to support me. So that was kind of a little realization in my head that I was like, okay, that's true. You're just not even allowing the opportunity to let in support. So I think, at least for the end of the year, I will be posting 1 podcast a week. I want to say every Tuesday. Tuesday was the day that I was like, okay, let's do Tuesday. But this week is already Wednesday. So that is just something that I want to commit to for the end of the year, to become the top 1% in something. And that's going to be podcasts. So that was fun to do, the little calculations for that, the really intense scheduling calculations to become the top 1%. But I also think that I have some really interesting things to tell you about yourself. Pause for a drink break in dramatic effect. I was looking into you all a little bit too, and I found some very fascinating things. Very interesting. I'm not someone who spends a lot of time looking at analytics. It's really never been something that I've done. I'm trying to get a little bit better at it because every single successful YouTuber I guess by successful, I just mean who grow views and also have a good income from YouTube. They all are like, you need to pay attention to your analytics. I still think it's like a little bit debatable, but I did find out some really interesting things. So I am intrigued a little bit more, and I think I can have a more balanced approach to it. So I will admit that I need to work on that a little bit more. But coming onto the analytics, the demographics of you all listening right now compared to my YouTube channel, I think is really fascinating. And I came to a really interesting conclusion. So I started YouTube when I was in high school. So growing up and looking at these analytics whenever I would always just see like people similar to me and my age watching my videos. I have really grown up on YouTube, and I'm now 27. I will be 28 next month, January 5th. So where you're listening right now, if you're on YouTube, I have a bigger male audience as of the last 365 days. And I think that makes sense because one of my biggest podcasts right now is with Steezy Kane. And I feel like he would have a primarily maybe bigger male audience for the content that he used to do. And then I have a 39% female viewership. But the interesting thing is the age demographic. So you all on this podcasting channel, the biggest demographic is 25 to 34-year-olds at 40%, 40.1%. The second biggest demographic is the 18 to 24 at 39%. So 80% of people are 18 to 34, but I just think it's really interesting that the bigger demographic, just by a little bit, by less than 1%, is 25 to 34. So that means that most of the people on this podcast are kind of like my peers, whereas on my YouTube channel, a lot of the time, and in the YouTube space nowadays, I feel like the big sister / grandma of YouTube, like the mom. I get the feedback from like my friends in person or creator friends. They're just like, you're very comforting and safe. And literally I get like big sister or mom. So it's kind of nice because I've been doing, this question was prompted by Simon, my roommate in Austin. And he was like, what are the people who started doing YouTube when you did, what are they doing now? Because you've been on YouTube for like so long. And that sent me off into a little rabbit hole deep dive of what my peers who started with me way back in 2012 are doing now. And a lot of them honestly are doing pretty good. Big platforms, like, I don't know, I feel like there was like the first generation of YouTubers, like the Bethany Moda, Beauty Star 07, and then there was like the next generation, honestly, when I started, but I was always like a little bit smaller. Like people were always like, I was still in, like, this is even like in high school too, like I was in the cool groups, but I would always just be like a little bit removed or like a little bit detached. And that is true for YouTube too. Because I've always like had my foot in like kind of different doors, where it's like for YouTube, like I was always in school and had like a rigorous like schedule or whatever, like tried really hard. And in school, like I always had YouTube in the background. So like I spent my time, split between a lot of different things. And that's kind of also where I get the connotation of unemployed to me in my brain is like, you have like many things you're a part of. So it's not like your full identity to be a part of like one thing. A lot of the people that I checked up on, it's interesting to see. And I've been like, I checked out like, I don't know, like it's hard with the internet because like it is true, like out of sight, out of mind, like what I was saying with like I wasn't even giving the opportunity to support me. It's like if you just disappear, that's the weird thing about posting online is like if I'm even in a new place or like sometimes if I just post, people will reach out to me tenfold of just sending me a text. And I have this theory that I think is true. It's like availability bias or something like that, where if you're constantly, posting online, then you're popping up in people's brain more just because your face is there. So then, you can either be reached out to more or I don't know. I think of this for like people that you end up following that you never really talk to again in person, or like, you know, you went on a date or something and then they just perpetually become a follower of you for the rest of time. And I don't know. I think there's some psychological thing where it's like not even good to have people following you that you don't really want in your life, because they will constantly see you and then just have you in their brain all the time. That was a little bit of a tangent, but where I was going with that is that I was checking up on a lot of different creators that I like either collabed with like really early on or just like knew about. So it was just really, really interesting to just kind of look back. But one of the things that I feel is a struggle, or just like a necessary burden or obstacle to climb for creators on the platform for a while, is there's a period where you're like a child, like, you know, you're growing up, you're like in high school, and then you grow up, and so you're an adult. It's like the Miley Cyrus arc. It's like people kind of, there's a period of time where you are no longer the person that you portrayed on the internet, so you're kind of playing the character of yourself, but you're actually not the same person. And there is like a point in time where you grow up, but your audience is still young. So you're growing up, but your content really can't grow up. So then there's like a disconnect. I think me sharing these demographics is just like a really interesting thing, because my audience is grown up, you know, like I think that's what this is telling me. It's like I have permission to talk about things that I think are relevant. And that's always like, that is kind of a big step forward with this podcast, even, is like I feel like it's like me allowing myself to go to those topics or like talk about those things that I'm genuinely interested in, because there are still a lot of things that I filter and just don't even mention, where like I'll see even my friends like talk, like even just like the weed thing, I like would never mention that, but I'll see my friends talk about it, or like even like very family friendly YouTubers talking about how much. So I'm like, you know, my audience can deal with it. They're old enough. And I don't have to just like brush on topics that I find fascinating or interesting. Like I can actually dive deep into them. Like even talking about like monthly sobriety, or just like taking breaks, or like, okay, another topic that I am going to talk about is like the hero's journey, and just, reading about this book. The hero's journey is a storytelling structure. It's like an outline. And it's interesting because I thought that everyone kind of knew about this, and I distinctly remember learning about this in freshman year high school English class, where we learned about the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. And I was like really drawn to that. I was like, that is so fascinating. It's basically, you know, I don't know how many even parts there are in the hero's journey, like 9 to 12 little different steps, where you have like the hero, and then there's a call to action, and then there's a rejection to the call, and then there's like a desire for, you know, this different life that's not just your own, and then there's like this whole venture into the underworld. Like you leave the familiar place, you go into this underworld and face your shadows, or your big you go on the adventure, and then you emerge on the other side back into the familiar place, like a changed person from this whole series of events that happens. So I've been trying to brush up, I've been trying to improve like a lot of my skills, or just admitting to myself what I'm trying to do in life, and then just trying to strengthen those things. So I've been doing some like YouTube courses, and I did a writing course. But there are a few things that I've just been doing regularly for like now 10 years. It started off, you know, not being a habit, but I've been writing and journaling for like almost 10 years now, very regularly, where before I would just do it like very sporadically. Like I find my old journals, like this is from childhood. Let's see. Let's just take a peek inside the first date. This is like the little lock ones that you could do. Amory Allen's Dumb Diary. Not really. Okay, so this is 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008. So this started July 05. So now I've been journaling like pretty regularly for like since like 2014, 15, 16. I've been doing yoga pretty regularly since like 2017 now. So just like a few things that have really started off sporadically but have been so consistent in my life that I feel like the compounding effects now. But now I'm trying to dive deeper into those things, like with writing and journaling. I'm trying to get to the next step of like writing, because I write all the time for my journals, but it's just like, the future of YouTube is storytelling. And I feel like I have all these like different stories in my head of even like my life and just like stories of my own life, because that's what we do as humans. We like process our life events through stories and perception and how we process those events. And so I've been trying to kind of nail those down a little bit more. And I think that has been extremely exciting, like something that I'm very excited about. I have been hearing about this book, The Hero's Journey, just over and over again from so many different sources, like even before I was doing my writing course. I feel like every podcast, even I was listening to a really old podcast with Bethany Moda by Elle Mills, actually. And she just mentions The Hero's Journey. So it's interesting to see which different groups like really know about storytelling methods, because I feel like every YouTuber you will talk to now is like, yeah, of course I know The Hero's Journey. But my dad was here and he was like looking and he was like, oh, what is this book about? It says Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. And I'm like, it's about the hero's journey. He's like, what's that? And it's interesting to me because I remember learning about it in English class, but I also remember my 5th and 6th grade teacher, Miss Kaltenborn, like teaching us literally how to edit. And I was talking to a friend who was in the same class as me, like my childhood best friend. And she was like, yeah, I don't remember ever learning how to edit. So it's kind of interesting to just see what your brain naturally went towards even in childhood and what you found interesting. Because I both remember completely remember how to edit. I feel like she taught us how to edit and I've never stopped since. And then I also just remember The Hero's Journey. So an interesting little thing is I feel like this book has good reviews, but it's just like a little slow to start. And I was just like, do I even really want to read this book? And I have been doing this thing where I flip to like a random page in a book. I started with The Creative Act by Rick Rubin because I would be like stuck on a YouTube video or something, and then I would just flip to a random page and it would literally tell me how to move forward. Like, I'm not even kidding. That book is kind of magical in that way. It doesn't work every single time, but I'm telling you, it works like half the time. So I was just like, do I want to commit to like even reading this book? I flipped to a random page and the random page mentions Carl Jung. And if you listen to my last podcast, if you watched my last video called Synchronicity in NYC, you know that I've been in a Carl Jung rabbit hole. Like, I have been learning a bunch about him through learning about synchronicity, and honestly, the more that I go through his stuff, the more I like him and the more intrigued I am. And the last time I was here, I even got this little book called Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And I just started reading. Again, I kind of just flipped to a random page and I flipped to this chapter about how essentially Carl Jung, like at the end of his life, I believe, he retires to somewhere in Switzerland and literally builds like a tower or his own, I don't know, I think they called it a tower. And it was a very symbolic process for him of like completing the hero's journey for himself. And he built this place of living with his own 2 hands. And like he had a lot of breakthroughs there and all this crazy, amazing, synchronistic stuff. And so this is like the only part of this book that I've read. And I flipped to this random page in this book, The Hero's Journey, and he's talking about how he literally went to dinner at Carl Jung's like tower place in Switzerland. And I don't know, he's just mentioning Carl Jung, who I've been learning a ton about recently. I was even listening to Andrew Huberman, who I don't listen to his full episodes that often, but I listened to a clip where he's talking about his faith, and he says, Einstein believed in God. Carl Jung, who was the greatest psychologist to ever live, believed in God. So just like a lot of references to Carl Jung. And I told this to my dad. I was just like, he was like, who is Joseph Campbell? Like, why is he notable? And at the time, I honestly didn't really know, other than he's kind of like coined this process for the mythological arc story structure. He's just given it like, an outline, and it's a very evident recurring thing. Like, you can see it in Star Wars, the story. Apparently the writers were inspired by one of his books that he put out to kind of copy the structure. And I was just telling my dad, I was like, like, he was also friends with apparently Carl Jung. And then my dad is like, oh, apparently Carl Jung also was responsible for the creation of Alcoholics Anonymous's big book. And then I did he wasn't quite sure, so I did some quick Googling, and he indeed was like William Wilson, the person who founded Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote Carl Jung a letter, and he says that he was like the first link to the chain of what started the system of Alcoholics Anonymous. So just like really interesting little things that also just seem to be leading down its own little rabbit hole. But a reason why I also thought this was interesting is because I feel like this is something I'm still like figuring out and developing, but I feel like developing a thought process or a mindset of faith over fear, and just kind of knowing or believing that there's like something bigger, whether that be God or the universe. And this is still like a topic that I'm exploring myself, but more and more, honestly, like my little synchronicities have led me to like exploring faith and like going to church and like just learning more about that, at least. And it's funny because when I read books, and especially when I read books like when I'm back home, because there was a period of time where I feel like I did absolutely nothing, progressed in absolutely nothing. And this happens throughout life, like not as much anymore, but it definitely does, because my state of mind was just so turbulent, because I felt like I could always be doing something else, or that my time could be better spent somewhere else. Or if I was reading a book, I'm like, how do I know that this is the book that I should be reading and that is useful to me versus like this book or another book? And I honestly think that there's no possible way for you to ever know that or what you're doing is the right path to be on, other than like intuition and just trusting that there is something bigger than just you and your brain making all these decisions to lead you down to the right path. And it's funny because with books, I remember I used to love reading books. Like, I loved fiction books. I would win like little reading competitions when I was in elementary school. And I stopped reading for a really long time until I started picking up nonfiction again. But I stopped reading because I came into that problem of being like, is this the book? Because I think there's so much excitement about books, because it's just knowledge. It's like someone spent hours pouring their knowledge and information into a book. I know that anyone could really write a book nowadays, because the printing is anyone can write a book. But for the most part, I like to see books as like just pure wisdom and knowledge that someone took the time and effort to pour into that book. And I just wasn't sure if that I would get like a mini existential crisis of like, should I spend my hours reading this book when there are countless other books that I could be reading at this current point in time? And that is a big problem to grapple with yourself. It's just like, is anything that I'm doing in this current moment the thing that I should be doing to move my life path along? And there are infinite, the movie Anything Everywhere All at Once, are infinite possibilities of how your life could go. Like, how are you supposed to know? That's a lot of pressure on an individual person to pick what book they're going to read right now. So with all of that being said, I think that's something that even just having faith or just believing in something bigger is, I'm now comfortable with the books that I'm reading, and I'm comfortable in the moment reading that freaking book. Even like the hero's journey, and just like recurringly hearing the hero's journey. And even after I got the book, I just kept hearing about it more. So then it's just like, okay, I feel good about reading this book. And it's not just like, random. It's stuff that like really piques your interest and calls to you. It's like I literally remember learning about the hero's journey in my freshman year English class, and then every single, like, I've been listening to a lot of Stephen Pressfield's, and like he mentions it. The random episode that I listened to with Bethany Moda, like one of the OG YouTubers, she mentions the hero's journey, and just like, you know, topics that I'm already interested in, people that I'm interested in hearing from, talking about like the same things. That gives me faith and just knowing. And who will ever, at the end of the day, know if that was truly worth your time? But I feel like that is something that faith has given me. And it's evident just simply in reading a book. And I would say that's where it's most evident, because I knew that there was such a problem. I was like, for me to not be able to even just be in this moment and feel comfortable reading this book and reading a few pages, which used to bring me such comfort and joy, even as like a kid, I was like, there is something wrong with my thought process of life right now. And I knew that I would figure it out. I was like, I think it might take a few years. It might be a whole journey to find inner peace in that way. But you know what? I did. So, wow, I didn't really expect to go into that topic, but that's something that is like a bookmark in my brain that I often think about, of like a really interesting reflection point. I've been thinking a lot about the idea of like you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forwards. And that is one of the dots that I've connected, of just being like, I distinctly remember a time when I just couldn't even sit and read a book, and how much my internal state of being just at a baseline has changed, which I'm very grateful for. But again, like, I think it's also just kind of like having faith that like what you're doing is like the thing that you're meant to be doing at this current moment. What is meant for you will never pass you by. Not much else to share there, but I am also trying to create some future videos and a very much more storytelling arc using the hero's journey, because it's crazy when you have like already proven outlines of storytelling methods that work, or like the 3-act structure, and you can actually fit a real life story into that structure. And then it's really helpful for me, who, when I'm making some videos, sometimes I'm like, oh, I could do this, or this, like go here, here, and here, where I'm trying to be better at like writing things out and planning, or even like for this podcast, I've written an outline, because I really can go everywhere, but that's not always like the best thing. I've been listening to like a lot of podcasts about how to podcast, and and it's been really interesting. And even just like listening to other people's feedback on other podcasts, and it's like people hate open loops. You want to close the loops that you start. People generally want some direction, and if you're just like talking and you're just talking to talk, which I also kind of hate, people don't like that. So yeah, it's been a fun little process, and I'm really determined to like kind of just get better at this, because I've really been enjoying it. So, okay, did I mention that I was starting Vlogmas? I'm doing Vlogmas, and there is one video that I want to post before then, so either I'm going to have to get on that, or I'm just going to start with Vlogmas and then kind of post those stories. Maybe it's just meant to be that way, because I kind of feel like I'm still in the middle of like processing, but I'm doing Vlogmas, and my original plan was to be back in Austin by Vlogmas and start my Vlogmas there with my new roommates, and just have a great time. But as I have been here, did I tell you guys about the auroras? There have been more auroras. We're in a new solar cycle for the next 8 years, and in the next 2 years, there will be more auroras, northern lights, now than like the last 20 years. And I'm fascinated by the auroras. I even got a notification on Monday or Tuesday that there was like a radio blackout, because the auroras are basically, okay, I'm not a scientist, but this is like my understanding of auroras. It's basically the sun has solar flares, which is basically just like the sun kind of like burning, or like having I think they're called coronal mass ejections, where a solar flare happens, like a sunspot explodes, and then that sends energy out. And we're here at Earth, and the Earth has poles, which have like a gravitational pull. So when this energy comes and meets Earth, it gets sucked into the poles. So you can see them on the North Pole and the South, and essentially they come out and interact with the atmosphere and come into color, and that produces the northern lights or the auroras. That might be off, but it's like something related to that. And they've also been known, like huge storms have been known to create like small power outages or it's wiped out like small electronic devices. And then I got like this notification from the space weather app that was like small radio blackout, and there was like a huge massive solar flare eruption with like a M9 flare. So I was supposed to leave like Thursday morning here, and that's supposed to hit like Thursday evening to Friday. And so I was just like, you know what? I think I might just stay in Alaska. And this is also like, you know, I've been here for 2 weeks, but I had no idea that I was here for 2 weeks. It's just kind of like a time vortex. And I'm going to make it out. I'm going to leave. Regardless, I'm going to go back to Austin in December. And I think I'm just going to go like a little bit later. And I think it'd be really fun to start Vlogmas in Alaska. So definitely go subscribe to my main channel, because that's where I do Vlogmas. I really have not much planned, but I know that it'll be super eventful, and I know that I will run into a bunch of friends and people in Austin, and hopefully my roommates will be there for like a little bit longer so that I can make videos with them and have a good time doing that. And I'm really excited. So planning on doing Vlogmas. And also, if I'm here longer, I went to see a movie with my parents at the Beartooth Theater. And if you're not aware, like that's an amazing, we used to go there all the time, like growing up. Like it's an amazing pizza place, and also a really cool place in Alaska. I should do a video on like places to go in Anchorage, especially in the winter, because I feel like that's tough. But I was seeing a movie. It was about the GameStop stocks. I forget what it was called. But at the Beartooth Theater, they're handing out pamphlets for the Anchorage International Film Festival. And it starts December 1st. And I was just like, okay, this would honestly be really sick to go and see. And speaking of little synchronistic events, I was just talking. We had some family friends over, and they took me to the Snow City Cafe, which is the cafe that Obama came to when he came to visit Alaska or Anchorage. And one of my friends from high school works there, and they were just talking about how I went to go eat with them, and they were just like, yeah, Marie knew like everyone in Anchorage. And that's, I don't know, I feel like that is kind of true of growing up in a small town, is you see people like everywhere you go, and that's like a blessing, I think. So I was talking about him and how like his dad is an artist in Anchorage, and then I get this pamphlet, and he's like he has like a short film on like the first day that I can actually be here and go to. So I think that'd be really cool. Just, I'm trying to get more integrated in the Alaska creator community, and I'm like kind of integrated, but it's kind of like that thing that I mentioned earlier where I'm like kind of in, kind of out, because I'm not living here full time currently. But I feel like, you know, the whole hero's journey, there's like a part, you know, the last step is like they return to the familiar place, a changed being. I feel like I'm not quite there yet, even though I feel like I've gone through that structure like a number of different times. And that's a thing, that it's all cyclical. You'll go through it like many, many times in your life. If you believe in reincarnation, it's kind of like the same thing, just with lives on a macro scale. But I feel like I'm still going through that process. And I feel like the final stage at some cycle that I will go through, or that I'm currently going through, will be I'll come back to Anchorage and be able to do all these like creative things that I've always envisioned for here, and before I even left to the outer world. Like I had a vision of like what I wanted to do here for Alaska, and like within Alaska and with other creators. And I feel like my full circle moment will be when that is achieved, and when I successfully do that. So being super vague with that, there are just like a few things that I would love to do and like people that I would love to feature and work with in Alaska that I'm working towards. So maybe, maybe I can advance a little bit in that arena for Vlogmas, just being here. I mean, those are some, I'm like talking about like these grand plans and I'll be here for like 5 days or whatever. But again, like sometimes when I come to Alaska, I'm just like, wow, I just like remove myself and am in this different universe. And then I kind of remove myself from all the other universes that I'm a part of now in the multiverse of like Austin, New York, I don't know, like wherever. And I just get like a little detached. And again, I think insanity is doing the same thing every day. And I kind of like, I'll go on my little walks here. I'll do like kind of fall into the same pattern, but I want to disrupt that pattern. And whenever I have invited creators to Alaska, I feel like that has always had like monumental changes and has shifted the course of my life. Like, honestly, another thing that I want to bring back onto my main channel, probably after Vlogmas and like starting in January, ideally, would be my I Interned For series. Because, okay, so I was out with my hometown best friends and they were drinking and I was just like, drinking my orange soda. And the waitress, she poured the wrong drink for one of my friends. And it was just like interesting because I'm like this too, not as much anymore because also my mom is just like very good at being confrontational or just like asking for things. And like my sister was a waitress and she was just like, people, they don't care. It's like not, on their dime that they have to bring you the correct order or take back your order if you don't like it, whatever. But I was just watching my friends be like, we can't like approach this waiter, or they'd be practicing like what they were saying. And I just thought it was so funny because that is like me by my nature. And then I have all these like YouTube friends who, not all of them, a lot of them are like me and like more reserved, and like my friends who it kills them. It gives them great anxiety to like ask the waiter to correct their order. But I also have a lot of YouTube friends and creator friends who just they have audacity, they have courage to create their own reality. And I don't know, I think like the more that you do that, the more you also realize like, if it's like just fine to ask for what you want. And I'm also kind of in the stage where I'm not quite there, but I've seen that happen enough. That's like the final steps of my hero's journey too, is like, when I go through my transformation, like that will be kind of a thing. Like even I was like almost super late to the airport until I have clear and they just had me skip the whole line. But there is one point when I was waiting in the line that I was like, I might be missing this flight if I might need to start asking people if I could cut them. And there have been times in my life where I've done that. Like I remember like this happened like Thanksgiving like 2 years ago. And me and the guy in front of me were just like, we're going to miss our flight. And I just said, how about we join forces and ask every single person in front of us to cut them? And we made it to our flight last minute. I literally ran after cutting so many people until we got to a person who's just like, no. So many people let us cut them. And there are times in my life where I would just simply never ask. And if you never ask, you're never going to get a yes. But if you just ask, there's a possibility of a yes. And we went to like this other art show festival thing for small business weekend after Thanksgiving. And I got this amazing candle. This was by a local Alaskan artist or candle maker. It smells exactly like Fruity Pebbles. But I was watching my friends again. They were like, oh, there's this like really nice art piece, but it's a print. But it's like $1,000 and he would get it for like $800. But it's just like, I mean, I don't think I would ask for a discount either. I know my mom would, but just never even got to asking. And it's like the answer will always be no if you just never ask. This is me giving myself a pep talk to just like reach out to the people that I want to do podcasts with, or like even my friends who I know want to see me, and just like planning something with them or inviting them on to do something or just anything. So, yeah. Another random page that I flipped to in this book the second random page I flipped to, I swear this was like one flip to another flip, and I found two very fascinating topics that I'm pretty interested in. The other one was talking about tarot cards and how he used tarot to determine something. It's on page 172 of this book if you're genuinely curious. I'm not going to read it out loud, but it was funny because you would think that I'd be someone that'd be into tarot, but whenever I have a tarot deck in front of me, I will use it. Or I'll ask like people who are into tarot to like read my tarot on a certain topic or whatever. But I have never bought myself a tarot card. When we were searching for an apartment, or our broker for the Your Mom's House apartment, she was wearing an evil eye necklace, and I didn't know what the evil eye was at that time. And I was just like, oh, I really like your necklace. And she was like, oh, it's the evil eye, and this person bought it for me. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. And she was like, you can't buy it for yourself. You have to have another person buy it. And I feel like that is true for pillow pets. Like, do you guys remember those? I have 2 pillow pets. These are at least like 15 years old, or the dolphin at least is. I got that for my 16th birthday. Okay, so it's 11 years old. I think it was my 16th birthday. And its name is Emmett. But I also feel that way of tarot cards. I was going to buy myself at like McNally Jackson, the bookstore. I was in FIDI, and I was like really close to buying one, and I was just like, no, I feel like this is something that someone else has to buy you, or you have to come across it, just like shrooms. It has to just come into your life, like the universe has to present it to you. And I just got an email from this woman, this lady who makes alpaca tarot cards. And she sent me an email and was like, hey, I was listening to your podcast where you talk about like PR packages, because I just don't really accept like a lot of PR packages just because I move around a lot and I don't want like a bunch of junk. Like, that's not something that I want. Like, I will give like half of my stuff away too, because you can only use so many things. And she was just like, I was introduced to your videos by my daughter when you were at your content house, and your guys' videos inspired me to bring this alpaca tarot deck to life. And it was just a really nice, sweet message where I had literally like, I knew that somehow these tarot cards would come into my life, and I was like, she asked me if she could send me a deck, and I was like, I would love that. I feel like and I told her this little story, not the whole in depth, but I was like, yeah, I just knew that I would wait for the moment that they would come. So that is something that I'm looking forward to receiving that package. I think it's already in Austin, and I've spent a lot of this year bopping around, nomadic. Like, I never would describe that of myself, but other people in my life, like my friends, are always just like, you're very nomadic this year and for like the last few years. And one thing to make your moving experience, because I love this lifestyle, but I will say, like, when I was going back and forth between like New York, it's hard to leave. It's sad and hard to leave, but it's also exciting because you're going to like the next place. But it is kind of just like you're leaving this life for a different one, which is just kind of bizarre to think about. So like when I'm in Austin, like I'm not in Alaska, or now that I'm in Alaska, I'm not in Austin, but it's like I'm missing, like Shelby is going to be in Austin, or like this other guy who was in my writing course was like, oh, like we're doing a lunch tomorrow that I would have been there for if I had taken my original flight. So it's hard, but it's like, like Alaska for me is home, and I have like these things that I still want to do here, or like Austin, when I'm back in Austin, like there are so many amazing things that I'm excited to be there for. And so it's like, it's both having gratitude and grief, like a little bit. Like, I feel like that's what it is. But one thing that I think makes the process easier is having something to look forward to in the new place, or bringing like a piece of home. So when I first moved to Austin, I actually brought my baby blanket. I'm not even kidding. I grew up with my Blue, and probably not going to bring it back this time around, but I'm really glad that I brought it for like the first like month or 2 that I was there, because it just brought like so much peace and comfort. Like it's an Airbnb, so all the furniture, it's so nice that we don't have to bring anything, but it's like all new stuff. It's a new environment. It's new bed, it's not your sheets, and just having something that's so cozy from home was so nice in the adjustment period of just like being in a new place and like sleeping in a new bed. And now I've sent some Little Saints drinks there. My roommates are still there, so they're receiving packages. I have a little Alpaca tarot deck waiting for me that I will definitely have. I'll do like a reading or just like pick a card or whatever in my first episode back in Austin. And I actually have a popcorn machine waiting for me. So I'm very excited to be going back to Austin, but also I'm still very grateful and excited to be here. But that's just like a little tip if you're constantly moving around, is to either bring something familiar with you or have something to look forward to while you're there. Or even like I also bought this Malin and Getz. I forget, that's not how you say it, but I bought their cannabis soap. It smells so good. And I'm like extremely excited to use that in Austin. I actually was trying to ship it here, but they don't ship to Alaska. So maybe I'll buy some more and bring it to Alaska to look forward to using something the next time I come here. So that is just, I think kind of all of my little updates that I have on my outline. Again, I don't really know when I'm going to be back in Austin. I'm starting Vlogmas, I think December 1st. So that is extremely soon. Stay tuned and watch my main channel for Vlogmas. That'll be very exciting. I'm excited for that creative challenge. And again, I've only posted 8 videos this year, so that'll bring me up to potentially 20, 30. I don't know. I usually get to like 12 to 15 Vlogmases each year, but this year might be different. Maybe I'll make it all the way through. So if you have made it this far in the episode, this was thoroughly so nice for me to see for Jade and Clover. So if you commented Jade and Clover on the first episode where I was like, if you made it this far, comment, I will say comment the hero's journey. It's very encouraging just to like see the little interactions and just to know that you're like actually talking to someone, because sometimes it could feel like you're just, and again, like I don't do a very good job inviting people to participate and support, so I'm gonna try to do a better job with that starting now. So comment the hero's journey if you've made it this far with your favorite emoji, and thank you all so much for listening. Again, this has been really exciting and fun for me, so I'm looking forward to posting more episodes. So look out for my Vlogmas for a new Unemployed Millennial episode.